What's up everybody, Avian here. Another champion that I've been blazing through ranked queue with is Brand. He's an off-meta mage support whose kit includes a pair of long-range skill shots, crowd control, intimidating burst, and AoE damage, along with a passive that is useful against the current meta in Season 6. I find Brand challenging to play due to the diverse options you have with your spell rotation. Understanding how his abilities work with one another and executing the correct spell rotation, I've found can be quite difficult. You have to be good at landing your skill shots and understanding your abilities in order for you to be able to peel for your allies, crowd control targets, intimidate and burst enemies down. However, you have to remember that Brand is an incredibly squishy mage, and I highly recommend that you're cautious and you respect your cooldowns. If you miss your abilities, be prepared to step away from the enemy, especially if they respond by applying some pressure at this moment. Brand's abilities can be used both defensively and offensively, although I recommend that you don't position yourself offensively out of habit if you are going for kills. Use your range. Now before we move on to consider runes and the items, etc., I wanted to ensure that people completely understood Brand's abilities. He was released in 2011, so I presume that most of you already understand how they work with each other, so skip this part or navigate to another topic with these links. I've also left a contents list in the description below, and as always I will be responding to any questions, so please get in touch after watching the guide if you have any. So for those of you who don't already know, Brand's abilities all interact with his passive, Blaze. Brand's abilities set his targets ablaze upon damaging them and applies a debuff that deals 8% max health over the next 4 seconds, as well as empowering his other abilities against the enemy. Now during this time, it's useful to let the seconds pass between landing each of your spells and apply auto attacks in this time instead, as this gives you the best damage output. Now Q is your Seer. This is a straight lined fireball range skill shot. It deals magic damage and applies the passive Blaze and stuns enemies who are already ablaze for up to 2 seconds. The cooldown for this at later ranks is very short, which is incredibly strong if you land your skill shots consistently. I max this second. W is Pillar of Flame. After a brief delay, Brand nukes the target area with a flame, dealing damage and applies Blaze to all of the targets within that area. Any targets already ablaze suffer an additional 25% additional magic damage. This is your second ranged ability and I always max this first. Brand's E is Conflagration. Now this sets a single target ablaze and deals magic damage, or if the target is already ablaze, when E is cast it will spread to nearby enemies and set them ablaze as well. Now I maxed that last. Now your abilities interact with each other in different ways. If you want to do more AoE damage, the best route is to set an enemy ablaze with Q to start with. Then you want to cast your E and spread the blaze, and follow up with your Pillar of Flame. However, if you want to stun an enemy, you would start out by using E, move on to Q, and then finish with W to have the enhanced burst on the enemy. Or use W and then Q if you're trying to escape and you're too far away to start with E. Now R is Pyroclasm. This is a bouncing fireball that can bounce up to 4 times between enemies that are close with each other. It deals magic damage and sets them ablaze, and if the target's already ablaze, the next bounce is prioritized to an enemy champion. Remember that Blaze, Brand's passive, lasts for 4 seconds on the enemy, so be sure to wait between using your spells to maximize your damage. I can't express how helpful this is. Now if you just skipped those abilities because you knew them, it's time to pay attention again. In Season 2 I played a lot of Brand mid lane, and I found it really difficult to adjust when I've been playing him as support. It's really important not to act like a fed mage with incredible farm and desert your carries. It's very easy to do this in game, trust me. Pay attention to the fundamentals of support. Use your skill set to provide crowd control for your allies and deal consistent damage over time to their frontline tankier targets, as well as their assassins or other enemies who can extend onto your carries. The utility of landing Seer consistently is overwhelmingly strong at 45% cooldown reduction, and you will see this in game. So on that note, masteries are intended to aid my support utilities, champion stats, survival and damage. My rune page has a few alternatives, although the general pathway is to incorporate magic penetration or hybrid penetration marks, armor and flat health seals, ability power or flat MR glyphs, and quintessences of ability power. Any variety of these will boost your stats as Brand into the right direction for your playstyle. Now on that note, I like to play Brand aggressive, so if the enemy has cooldowns or they're going to last hit, I respond with auto attacks or use spells for additional damage. Brand struggles against enemies with sustain and kill potential. Thresh, Blitzcrank and Leona are gonna really give you a difficult time, so position safely and allow them to focus your AD carry, and then throw off some damage and crowd control at the back to try and support instead. If you're too excited about throwing your auto attacks, you can also land yourself in trouble, so ensure that the enemy really is occupied with something and back off once your spells are on cooldown, especially if you miss them. That's unless you have kill potential, of course. Now you need to land your skill shots in lane, be behind your minions and dodge enemy skill shots, and you'll quickly burn through some enemies in solo queue. Once you have your ultimate, you want to look for opportunities to blaze the enemy team when they're grouped together. Land your stun when another enemy is close, or follow up with a pillar and ultimate, and you'll often force summoners, recalls or get kills. Now when you're building Brand's items, I must stress to you that Sidestone is a must. If you're an AP whore, swap out upgrading your spell thieves and get the Sidestone item instead for the additional item space. But don't skip the Sidestone. Start up on the usual items for the mage base supports and upgrade to your essentials later on. Remember to swap out your trinkets and upgrade them at level 9. Now depending upon your enemy, your future choices of items should include Zeke's if your AD carry is building critical strike items, Locket of the Iron Solari against high enemy AP damage unless an ally is buying it, Mikkels against engage and crowd control heavy teams, and after this you can stuff your own luxuries in. Rod of Ages and Zhonya's are good choices for survival, as well as Rylai's. Now in regards to your boots, Lucidity, Mobility or Sorcerer's Shoes are all quite useful. I like to get the Sorcerer's boots if the enemy team is building lots of magic resistance. Now on your way to late game with your item builds, you want to ensure you're upgrading the cooldown reduction items first. Buy the Kindled Gem, Glacial Shroud and Forbidden Idol. If you want additional damage, I'd recommend Leandra's Torment, but I usually don't sacrifice utility items for damage options unless it's required. Remember that 45% cooldown reduction cap will allow you to cast your Seer out every few seconds late game for mass crowd control, and that should be a target that you're trying to hit with your item build. Now Brand is excellent fun and has opened up tons of opportunities for me bot lane. As I mentioned earlier, you will have a tough time against those tankier and engaging supports and the sustain ones, so ensure that you're doing your best to avoid poke and dish out as much damage with the advice I've given in these situations. Team up with AD carries that have mobility and burst to follow up with your crowd control and burst for great results. Lucian, Corki, Graves and Callista are all great examples, although Ashe and other kiting or engaging carries work well as well. I hope you all have some inspiration to go and try this pick out if you haven't already. If you liked the video or learned anything, then give me a thumbs up, or if you felt that I missed something out, get in touch in the comments below. Happy New Year everybody, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!